Well, welcome back everybody to part 2 of your Almanac activity here. Let's pick it up. Let's go to I here. As I'm looking at I that's here, this is just regular education. So if I'm taking a look at my US example that I've got in front of me that's here, I've got education. What I want to write is compulsory, ages 6 to 17. So compulsory 6 to 17. That means that education is required from ages 6 to 17. Now some of you are like, oh, education being required till I'm 17, 18 years old. Well, think about it. That means you have a more educated nation of people. Some countries actually require you to just go to school until you're the age of 12. Can you imagine just getting into junior high school and that's the only education you have? So keep this in mind as we're talking about a developed country with a lot of education versus a developing. If I'm looking at my last two that are here, J is transport. So just like you did with telecommunications, we're going to take a look at the transportation that's here. So if I look at the transport, I've got railways, 139,000 miles, motor vehicles, 109 vehicles per thousand. I've got 5,200 airports. That means you have a lot of communication. You're globalized. You've got the connectiveness that are here. So I'm going to say 5,194 airports is the example I can choose. You guys can choose anything else that you'd like here, but to write down. But just give me one example. 5,194. 5,194 airports is what I'm going to write in my notebook. That's great. That means we're connected. Now, if the U.S. had like 2 airports, now we're talking developing status here. And the very last one, K, this is what we want to know with urban. How many people live in the city that's here? We're going to find that in the people section that's here. And so if I go to the people section where I've got urban, I've got people, urban, right here. We're at 82% of the nation lives in an urban setting. So that would tell me that most people live in cities, and we know if we're looking at our characteristics of developed and developing, those that live in the city, most of the population, that means we've got a developed status here. So 82% of the people live in the city are urban. Awesome. So we figured out and finished A through K. So you have now, this whole part was for you to collect data on the U.S. Now we got to make our decision, and here comes the most important part that's here. So if we go to what we have here, and we've collected all this information, we know our best indicators are labor force, life expectancy, infant mortality, literacy rate, and GDP per capita. We're going to look at the statistics for your country that you just wrote down and answer the following. Is this, looking at all of these, a developed or a developing country? Well, I think it's been pretty obvious every time we've collected information here that these are all characteristics that hit a developed country. So I'm going to write that for A. And I make my decision, by the way, based off of what I've seen for the statistics I've covered. Now, I need to tell you this. Some countries are very easy to find developed or developing statuses because you see it and it happens to hit every category. But others may have a mix. And so you're going to have to use some of your best indicators here to determine if a country is developed or developing based off the notes you took last time. So please reference back to those notes as you're filling this out. Now, how am I going to defend this? Using 3 statistics that support your answer, meaning 3 chunks, 3 pieces of evidence, 3 pieces of elaboration. Well, what I'm going to do here is now I'm going to pick out 3 statistics that I feel like would point back into developed status, and I'm going to use my chunks. So I'm going to have to give evidence and an elaboration, and we're going to have to give 3 of these. So let's start with an obvious one. Let's use literacy rate, all right? So literacy rate, since that is definitely one of my best indicators here, literacy rate, let's use that one. And with literacy rate here, I'm going to write this. The literacy rate is, and Let's say 99%. Awesome. Okay, so the literacy rate is 99%, which is my example. So I've got my example right here now. Awesome. What do I else need to include in this? I need to include an elaboration. So I'm going to say this, which means, or which, let's say shows, most can read and write, indicating a strong education. Awesome. I've got my evidence, and now I've got my elaboration. And by the way, that has to match up with the developed characteristic that's here. Great. Let's do another one, shall we? So if I'm going to say another one of these is life expectancy, health. Okay. We know that life expectancy, and I want to try to use 2 or 3 of these bad boys that are best indicators. I can also throw in some of the others, but I have to use at least 2 best indicators in what I've got that's here. 76 and 81. So let's do this. Life expectancy for males is 76 years, and females 81 years. Now, that's my evidence that I've got here. What am I missing again? Well, I need to show my elaboration, which shows strong health care. That's my elaboration. It just shows strong health care here. 76, 81 shows strong health care with long lives or good medication. One of the two, right? So I've given my elaboration that's here at this point, which is awesome. Now, usually I would, as you're copying this down, I would maybe use one that doesn't have a star next to it, but I really want to use one more great indicator to give you this example that's here. So let's go to GDP per capita. I think that's a big time one. We found out from what we did that our GDP per capita is 49,000. That's awesome. So what we're going to do here is going to say this. GDP per capita is 49,000. Again, which shows a high amount of goods and let's do this, a large amount of goods and high paying jobs. Awesome. We've given our evidence and our elaborations that here. All right. That sounds fantastic. That's here. So again, you have to give me a statistic, an evidence, and an elaboration which proves that it's a developed status that's here. Now, can I tell you this? As you've gone through this, the very next one that you're going to get a chance to do is Pakistan. And once you finish Pakistan and do the same thing, you'll be raising your hand. The teacher sub will be coming around checking it off. And if you do great, they'll hand you another Almanac entry. You'll write it on the back with the same setup here. And we'll keep going through collecting information telling me if it's developed or developing. Can I give you a hint here? Use your best indicators that are up here. So our best indicators being these guys right here. And making sure that not every time you're writing literacy rate, life expectancy, GDP. Switch it up. I want to see, can you use infant mortality rate to explain things? Can you use labor force to explain things? I want you to switch it up. So you can't use the same 3 each time. You got to use combinations of them. All right? One other thing I do want to say is this. How do we see this, by the way, on a map? One thing I do want to reference is this bad boy here. You're going to get a chance to see maps like this that we've got that are here a little later on in what we call a mapping lab. For now, I want you to notice 2 things here. There are resources, which you see that are here, that are listed on the map. So I'm looking at the United States here, resources. So just like you saw in the Almanac, all those variety of industries that we've got that's here. If I'm taking a look at what this is, like the coal is these little picks, hydroelectric power is this lightning bolt, I've got iron, I've got oil out in the Katrina area that we've talked about that's here. So this is a good way of being represented. We're going to see this later on, by the way. It's another type of map. There's also land use. So you'll notice the different colors indicate how we use this land. So commercial fishing by businesses all around the coastal areas here. Commercial farming, we'll take a look at where Fresno, California is in the United States. You'll notice the color there. Whereas brown is much more of this livestock raising. You'll notice the forestry stuff, which is in green, is a lot out on the west coast up near Seattle, where we've got trade and manufacturing out here. A great map to tell us just about a few things. So I wanted to squeeze that in there, but for now, I think you've got an idea of how you do your Almanac entry, which is here. You've got your papers, so ask for that Pakistan work, which is going to look like this, that you can start going through and taking a look at, right? And then making sure that you're filling in your entry for Pakistan now. Good luck, everybody. I hope you do well on this.